I challenged myself to draw 5 portraits a day for 5 days straight, just to see if it will improve my skills. I only had 2 rules. I would only spend 20 minutes per portrait, just so I wouldn't get carried away, and I only used the brush and eraser tool, so I could stay focused on drawing. Watch my progress and stay till the end to see all 25 portraits, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The time limit I placed on this challenge was the most stressful. I used to give myself a lot more time. In fact, I would give myself a few days to complete a portrait. This would give me a chance to walk away for a while and come back with a fresh eye. At least that's how I talked myself into thinking it would do. But really, it allowed me a chance to procrastinate, waiting around for the right moment when inspiration would hit, and then I would tackle it again. Between you and I, that's just untrue. Everything I've read and heard from almost anyone, way smarter than me, is saying that you have to do it consistently. That means doing it when you don't feel like doing it. And that's what makes the difference. Why should I treat drawing differently? Giving myself all this time is a way to procrastinate. It also made the drawing more special than it actually was. Like it was some masterpiece that needed some inspiration in order to make it flourish. In fact, this mentality is what keeps the drawing and myself from truly flourishing, because I am afraid to ruin it. I was careful with every line and every brushstroke, so I tried less, and I only tried what I knew would work. This does not lead to discovery and learning. You have to try new things. The compression of time was going to force me into making faster decisions with more frequency. And yes, I was stressed, but only because I was afraid to make something that would suck. I was afraid that people would see it and say, "Oh my God, that blows." So then, why am I doing this? For people whom I have never met? Or is it for me? Of course it's for me. It's to improve. So instead of seeing this venture as a surefire way of failing, I saw it as a surefire way of practicing in total safety. A bit like dancing as if no one is watching. And surprisingly, the speed created a momentum that was pleasant. I didn't have time to agonize over the lines. The speed also prevented me from thinking about the line I'm about to make, giving myself a whole lot of pressure to get that line perfect. Thinking about making the line doesn't make the line. Making the line makes the line. And the more lines you make, the less thinking, and the more doing. And the more doing, the more gets done. So lesson number 1, speed prevents me from overthinking. On day 2, I wanted to get off to a good start, so I got up early and hoped to get my 5 drawings done before noon. Mostly because I know about myself. I am most energetic in the morning, my mind and body are well rested from the night, and my best energies are ready to be spent on whatever it is I choose. When I learned this about myself, I became much more guarded about my mornings and how I spent them. They were like a treasured gift I could give myself every morning, and I deliberately dedicated this finite creative time to my own endeavors, like this drawing challenge. What I learned, though, was that I had a limit to the amount of creative time I had in me. I thought I could be some kind of machine where I would finish one drawing and start the next, in the name of efficiency and productivity. I was treating myself like a machine, and the drawings like some kind of assembly line, void of soul and magic, just efficiency. What a way to kill the joy, huh? Well, this became unbearable pretty quickly because it wasn't fun. In fact, it sucked. Why do it? I believe you can improve while having fun along the way. This is not some 9-to-5 time card punching 8-hour shift for the man. It was for me. So I gave myself little breaks between the portraits. Real breaks, like getting up, away from the desk and the drawing instruments, stretching, staring out the window, walking around, out of the room I was in, getting a glass of water. And this made all the difference. It reset my mind and it reset my body. It cleansed the palate. And I returned refreshed and excited, ready to start a new one. And I learned just how important this was only because a few times I did not do this. Instead of getting up, I stayed at my desk and gave myself a break by switching to an internet browser. And suddenly, from endless scrolling, I lost a half hour. A half hour of my precious morning time, doom scrolling, gone on social media. And even worse, I was not refreshed to tackle the next portrait. I was anxious and agitated from watching and reading all the nonsense that's happening now. I would return definitely not ready to do the next drawing. So if I was going to do this, I needed to truly give myself a real break between portraits and walk away from all of it briefly, because my body and my state of mind deeply affected my drawing. And not to get too deep, but this lesson extends far beyond the act of drawing. The body and the state of mind affects everything. So lesson 2, my body and mind affects drawing. By the third day, I felt a bit more relaxed in this challenge, and I started it by looking through the subjects that I had chosen to draw for that day. And as I was looking at each photo reference, I noticed that I was looking at them very differently than how I used to. Originally, I chose them for diversity, so I could learn about drawing people from different backgrounds. I worked on being selective also for positions, where the subject would be facing, from what angle, so I could get the most out of my practice time. But now, because of the frequency and the volume of drawings I was making, I was also searching for proportions, perspective, shapes, features. For each face I searched for angles and alignments, and I was strategizing how I would approach the drawing and what feature would help me capture who this person was. There were invisible structures, and I was trying to find them, so I would know how to spend the limited time I had for each portrait. I allowed myself this one cheat, a chance to pre-plan the drawing before I actually started to draw. But once I started drawing, I noticed something else, even more surprising. I spent more time looking at the subject than I did at my own drawing, and I think this shift was a turning point for me. Up until this point, I spent more time looking at my drawing instead. It was a revelation that explained my progress for over the years. I spent too much time staring at my own creations. It was like I was staring into a mirror, obsessed, like vanity. I was too concerned on how my drawing would turn out instead of discovering what makes this individual unique and special. The pre-planning made me look at the subject more because I was looking for the things that I saw before I started drawing. And as I was drawing, I kept looking back more and more to see if I was indeed seeing what I thought I saw. I had stopped doing that for a long time, and that ain't good. It means I've been too concerned about my technique or my tools or something else that was more about me than the subject, and that's just wrong. How can I hope to capture who this person is unless I spend the time observing them and keeping it about them rather than me? I inherently knew this, but I needed to relearn it. So lesson number 3, I looked at the subject more than my drawing. By day 4, the routine was making a difference in many ways, and most surprising was how much I looked forward to working on these new portraits. The pressure that I felt on the first day seemed to go away. The stress about the outcome of the drawing was replaced by the joy of making the drawing, which was what I was always intending. My hands felt light and nimble. in place of the dread of failure and the fear of making a bad line, was an intent on just making lines, one after the other, line after line after line. My hand danced around the page, from one place to the next. I didn't feel the need to complete an area and just move on in a linear and robotic way, like some sort of assembly line, the way I used to draw. Now I just went wherever my attention wandered on the page. It felt carefree and weightless. And even more freeing was, if something didn't look quite right, I could just try again and then again. I didn't have to live with any mark, line, or brushstroke that I had previously placed. It was not at all set in stone. Somewhere along the way, I began to believe this, as if someone was watching me and asking, why did I put that line there? Only if you're going to change your mind again and again and again. Why did I need to demonstrate my resolve and my skill and my confidence in art to this invisible person standing over my shoulder? The 5-day challenge now replaced this judgmental energy with the carefree joy of trying again and again and again. Now, the first line I drew would be close, the second would be closer, and the third one, closer still. Every mark was a search. Every line helped me measure and make another one closer, until I found what I was looking for. And if later it turned out to be not quite right, I tried again. No line placed was wrong. The line itself was not a final destination. The line was an act of continuous exploration, and I am free to explore as much or as little as I wanted. How freeing is that? So lesson number 4, each line is a search for the next line. This day was perhaps the most enjoyable. I looked through the drawings that I had completed and I had a surprising reaction. I was having fun looking at them. This may sound strange, and perhaps you might have gone through this too. You see, up until that moment when I looked at my old drawings, I always cringed, because I was always in search of my mistakes. I had a very critical eye where my own drawings were concerned. They were never good enough. I found misinterpretations of the reference and of the subject. I examined where I goofed here and there. I judged how successful the drawings were, simply by how closely it resembled the person I was drawing. It was a yes or no thing. There were no in-betweens. But this time, when I looked at the drawings, I saw something else. This time, I appreciated the lines that were off because they made surprising changes. They were, in fact, a kind of interpretation of the person, not a misinterpretation. They created a new way of seeing the subject and a discovery of proportions and structure. I loved how they looked, even if they were a little off. I was surprised at my own reaction. I was happy because I could spot the differences between the drawing and the reference. I was able to stand apart from my creation, evaluate it, appreciate it, without all the judgmental energy. And a deeper revelation? I realized the drawings were a combination of my whole sum of skill, how I was practicing, what I was learning as I was drawing, and my state of mind and body at that specific time. So each portrait drawn was in fact a self-portrait, and I began to appreciate how it recorded that moment in time for me, because it's a moment that may never come again. So lesson number 5, a portrait of the subject is also one of the artist. Well, there you have it. 5 lessons I learned from taking on this challenge. I encourage anyone who wants to improve to give this one a try. Maybe you'll learn something completely different. Who knows? If so, share it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Now, if you made it this far, here are the finished portraits. 25 of them. For 5 days, I drew 5 a day, and it was a lot of fun. Thanks for watching.